You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of electrifying everything, everywhere. Switched On is brought to you by the publishers of Renew Economy, Australia's best informed, most read website focusing on the green energy transition, and is supported by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Hello and welcome to Switched On Australia, where we explore the renewable energy transition from the consumer's point of view. I'm Anne Delaney and thanks for joining me. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm back on Arakwal country, part of the Bundjalung Nation in northern New South Wales. This week we're going to take a deep dive on a community energy project I've wanted to learn more about since it was launched last year. And I reckon now is a good opportunity because it recently received a sustainability gong, a Banksia National Sustainability Award. So congratulations to them. And it's the Haystacks Solar Garden in the Riverina region of New South Wales. And it's Australia's first large-scale solar garden. What's a solar garden, you might ask? Well, it's a way for people who can't often put solar panels on their own roofs, primarily renters and apartment dwellers who get locked out of household solar, to participate and benefit from renewable energy generation. Haystacks is a membership model where the members teamed up to buy 175 shares or solar garden plots in the Grong Grong solar farm. And while solar gardens are new in Australia, they have already gained quite a bit of traction in the US and Europe. And they could potentially help reshape how regional communities here interact with the big solar projects being built in their backyards. To find out how solar gardens work and how Haystacks works in particular, and whether they also can be scaled up across the country, I spoke to Nigel Hancock, Project Manager at Pingala Community Energy, who's also the Secretary of the Haystacks Solar Garden Co-op.
So the concept of a solar garden comes out of the US and Germany, where in those regions, people are able to invest directly into solar farms and the generation from those solar farms to be netted back onto their electricity bill. Now, that's not quite possible in Australia, at least not yet. We haven't managed to close that loop. So the concept of solar gardens in Australia is more along the lines of people having a virtual stake in a solar farm, and that to provide an on-bill credit to help share the benefits of solar and large-scale solar installations more broadly, and also to provide some bill relief for people who don't have the ability to put solar on their own roof. And that's a real key concept in the Australian context is solar gardens are not a replacement for rooftop solar. Rooftop solar in Australia is still one of the best investments a household can make. Hashtag not financial advice. But if you can put on solar, it is still one of the best things you can do for your home. But there's a lot of people in Australia who aren't able to do that. People who live in apartment buildings, who are renting, people who can't afford it in a lot of cases. So we call them locked out users, people who are locked out of the rooftop solar revolution. And this is for them. It gives them the ability to get involved in the solar revolution, and not be left behind as best as we can manage at this time with current regulations and market forces.
How does it actually work? How do the plots that members can purchase from Grong Grong? It's a financial arrangement fundamentally, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a bunch of financial contracts that make up the virtual solar farm and virtual plot. So when a solar gardener purchases a plot, the sale of those plots, those 175 plots, will be pooled together, and then it was offered to a solar farm, Grong Grong Solar Farm, as a form of finance. So we lent them the money. So the sale of the plots provides the capital to provide finance to a solar farm,
Mm-hmm.
and then that solar farm obviously makes repayments on that loan. And those repayments are then distributed amongst the solar plot owners. And we know what those repayments are because of the loan. They're $455 per plot per year. And that's how we effectively redistribute the earnings of the solar farm or the generation of the solar farm. So the solar farm, to make those repayments, sells electricity into the grid, sells electricity to a third party. They make their revenue out of the sale of electricity, and then they repay on the loan based on that revenue.
Is that $455 a year guaranteed? What happens if the solar farm underperforms or if the energy market shifts unfavourably? Who bears the risk on that?
So ultimately, everyone bears the risk on that, really. There's nothing guaranteed, but a finance agreement is
Mm-hmm.
about as close as you can get to a guarantee without being a government bond. We did try and de-risk it as much as possible. So the loan to the solar farm isn't their only form of finance. The solar farm isn't over leveraged. They're expected that their revenues will more than be able to make repayments on the loan on an annual basis. So a drop in revenue for the solar farm, i.e. something breaks or there's a change in the electricity market, will largely be like that risk is largely borne by the solar farm itself because they still need to make repayments and they need to repay on the loan first before they make any distributions or anything like that.
And I know it's only been going a short period. I think it's about a year. Have there been any payouts so far?
Yep. So we've received a couple of rounds of repayments on the loan, and we've already made 3 on-bill credit payments as well.
So this model basically expands access to renewable energy for what, anybody, anywhere in Australia?
Pretty much. There are some minor limitations around things like network involvement from retailers. So participating retailers need to have an offering in the network where you live and consume your electricity. So, for example, with the Haystacks Solar Garden, people in Western Australia and the Northern Territory unfortunately can't participate because our partner's Energy Locals, who doesn't have, at least as far as I know, a retail license in those jurisdictions. That might change in the future, but for the moment, it's just not possible to offer this arrangement with them. But yeah, in theory, if you have a retail partner in the jurisdiction and a solar offtake somewhere, then yep, it's quite possible to do it anywhere in Australia.
So the aim was to attract people who, as you say, are locked out of solar on their own premises. Have you found that they are the people who are investing in the solar garden?
Yes, mostly anyone who's put solar on their roof are happy with their situation at the moment. They don't need more solar. There is the occasional person who's put as much solar as they can on their roof, and they've got involved in a solar garden to proliferate more solar. So that's their motivation. Their motivation's not to save money. They just want to see more solar happen. But they're in the minority. The majority of people are renters or apartment dwellers, people who aren't able to install solar and want to get involved. There is one nice anecdote of a lady in the Riverina where the solar farm that we're involved with is. And she said she's spent 30 years growing trees around her property to give herself some nice shade. She's not going to cut them down for solar. So there's other things as well, other reasons as well why people wouldn't want to install solar, but mostly it's apartment dwellers and renters. Yeah.
Now, the project uses a cooperative model, and I presume that there's a buy-in cost for that. Tell me why this structure was chosen and how it benefits participants.
So we chose the cooperative model for the features of a cooperative itself. So cooperatives are democratic.
Mm-hmm.
They have a one member, one vote policy. So regardless of how many membership shares you own, each member only has one vote. The structure of them is that they are democratic, and the administration of them is that they administer at a state level. So it's a little bit easier to manage registration through the state body rather than through ASIC or something like that. In the case of Haystacks Solar Garden, cooperatives have this added benefit of having what's called cooperative capital units, or CCUs. And these are a type of debenture that can be set up in a way that suits a very specific project. So you're not limited by some of the restraints around shareholdings, share offerings. They still need to be registered with the state body. In New South Wales, that's the Department of Fair Trading. It needs to be signed off against national legislation, but it makes it very easy to build something that is specifically suited for a solar garden. We pioneered this approach in Australia. Cooperative capital units aren't commonly used in Australia, partly because they do need a lot of work to develop, because you're developing them from scratch for your purposes. There's no template to go and work off. But that was the advantage, is that you can develop them specifically for the purpose of a solar farm and solar garden.
So, Nigel, what's the buy-in? What do the members have to pay to be able to join Haystacks?
To join Haystacks, you need to join as a cooperative member, which is a $1 membership share and a $50 administration fee.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to join the cooperative.
Right.
Then to buy a solar garden plot for $4,200. That's the buy-in effectively of the solar garden itself. That's just the number we chose. It's a nominal amount for about 3 kilowatts worth of solar.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sort of the nominal size we chose for this solar garden.
So, I mean, that's obviously cheaper than putting solar panels on your roof.
It should be about comparable.
About comparable, right?
Yeah.
But is that accessible for lower income households?
No, not completely. We have to admit that this wasn't so much designed for lower income households, this current offering, partly because it's a pilot project as well. So we felt that making it accessible to lower income households and marketing it to lower income households might not be ethical. We did want people who got involved in this to understand that it is a pilot project and for them to be comfortable with getting involved with that. In saying that, we've done everything we can to de-risk the project as much as possible. There is a model for low-income access, but that was something that we couldn't quite achieve on this project.
On this
Yeah.
one, yeah. So what kind of financial returns or savings on their bills can members of the Haystacks Solar Garden expect?
So the bill returns are based off a loan that we have with the Grong Grong solar farm, and the returns of the loan with Grong Grong solar farm will give a per solar garden plot return of about $455 a year. And our arrangement with Energy Locals will give a $50 per year top up on that per solar gardener. So a solar gardener with one plot should expect to receive $505 per year for 10 years. The arrangement with Energy Locals is a 5-year arrangement with an opportunity to extend, but we expect in the current market that we're pretty confident we can stick to that $505 per year for 10-year estimate. But it is an estimate, and it is something that we need to sort of prove as much as we've offered it. So
Now, Haystacks is Australia's first large-scale solar garden. Tell me, what were the biggest hurdles in getting this project off the ground?
there's a
Where
few.
do you start?
Yeah. The first main hurdle was adapting the model to the Australian context. In other countries, in the US and Germany, there's a lot of regulations, and the way the market's set up, it allows for things like virtual net metering and other sort of trading of electricity. Whereas in Australia, that's not really possible, or at least it's not easy. And it's much easier to set up virtual solar gardens, virtual plots through financial agreements and contracts. So that's what we've done here. So translating that model from overseas into the Australian context was a challenge. And then there's the matter of actually getting a solar farm built in Australia. most solar farms that are being built at the moment are quite large ones, which makes sense. You get economies of scale. Companies who want to build solar farms want to build large ones so they can tap into broader markets and basically just make more money. But we partnered with a smaller developer who was pioneering what they call mid-scale solar, which is about 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts, which is for grid-connected solar quite small. But it was suitable to us because it meant we could go along for the ride with the developer. The developer could tailor the development somewhat to the needs of a solar garden, and we weren't getting involved in like a huge infrastructure project that could take multiple years, if not almost a decade, if in some cases. But having a small scale development has its own challenges. It's not a common way that solar's developed in Australia, especially when we first started. So there was a lot of learnings around how to get these sort of smaller projects onto the grid quickly and easily, because we needed it to be sort of as low friction as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So securing the land was very easy because the land where the solar farm's hosted is on a family farm, and they were involved in the process from the beginning, and has always been a very big advocate for the model. The finance was also relatively easy because the point of the solar garden is to finance solar projects. So that's kind of one of the main outcomes of wanting to do solar gardens, is that you are able to finance new projects. Solar gardeners provide a majority of the finance to Grong Grong Solar Farm, and then Grong Grong Solar Farm also had to do some investor finance as well. They do have shareholders, they do have investor backing, but they don't have to find it all from one source, and there's a lot of appetite both from the community to purchase solar garden plots and get involved in community energy, but also from investors to start investing in solar farms.
But are these sorts of projects, do you think that they're only possible with government grants to get off the ground?
No. So there's probably going to need to be more government grants, get projects like this developed in the short term.
Mm.
In our case, it was a pilot project. We had to develop everything from scratch. We had to redevelop things multiple times as things came to light, as regulations sort of changed a little bit as well. Ultimately, what we needed the grant for was the development of the model. The actual solar garden itself operates commercially.
Okay.
The idea is that once we actually have a replicable model, and each time we do one, we get closer and closer to that, then no, we won't need grant funding to set these things up. But initially, yes, we do need grant funding to help us develop that model and refine it.
Now, the project did face some unexpected costs. I understand that you got whacked with a grid connection upgrade, and you also got taxed on the New South Wales government grant pretty heavily. Tell me how you navigated those financial roadblocks.
Um, with patience and creativity. Yeah, there were.
It was a $150,000 grid connection upgrade, and
That sounds about right. Yeah.
270,000 tax on the New South Wales government grant. How big was the government grant?
So the government grant ended up being 1.97 million
You're right.
on a $5.3 million project. That was a little bit interesting. In 2018, there was a slight change to the rules on how you can record grant income and when it becomes taxable. What used to happen is that when you received a grant and did a capital project like this, you were basically able to stretch the tax receipt for the grant out over the life of the project. You weren't being hit with this large income tax bill in the first years of the project before you even become operational. In 2018, there was a rule change within the ATO that said that renewable energy projects aren't included under that rule. So effectively, it was a way for the federal government to tax grant money provided by state governments on renewable energy projects. But basically, what that means is you have to come up with that money up front. The tax bill becomes an upfront capital cost, paying off that tax liability when the solar farm is operating was part of our model to begin with. But when we found out that it had to be paid up front, that provided the challenge of navigating, well, where does this money come from? It's been allocated to capital costs.
Where did it come from?
Well, the solar farm had to raise more investment through equity investment, and we had to sell as many solar garden plots as possible to cover it all.
As quickly as possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that community solar gardens will remain niche? I mean, you said that it's, the size of Grong Grong, the solar farm, it's relatively small in relation to some of the big farms that are being now developed. Do you think that these types of projects are scalable?
Probably not in terms of their solar garden. I think they will be relatively niche in the Australian context. They're not in the US, but that's because the way the market's set up allows them to be a lot more accessible. I think in Australia they will be relatively niche because they have to hit sort of that spot between no access to solar and full access to rooftop solar. There's a large proportion of the population that sits in that group, but not all of them are going to want to be solar gardeners. But in terms of the size of a solar farm, there's no limit to how big the solar farm can be, and a solar garden could take 1, 2, 3 megawatts of that solar farm and operate a nice, very convenient solar garden for local residents just on that scale.
Right, so you could have it attached to a lot of the bigger projects, bigger solar farms.
Yeah, that's our hope, is that eventually this model will be it'll work for all scales. A community could set up their own 1 or 2 megawatt solar farm and finance it through solar garden plots, or a community could get involved in a larger project by purchasing 1 or 2 megawatts of capacity from a 200 megawatt project or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because, as we know, a lot of regional communities aren't necessarily benefiting from the energy that gets created on the land around them. So this would be one way of doing that.
Yeah, I suppose I should say that we're not advocating that this is the only way that those large projects benefit share with the communities, but it's one good win-win-win way. The project itself gets access to finance. That finance is local, so it both benefits the local economy, and the residents see a reduction on their electricity bills as a part of that investment. It should really be considered as a local economic development project for a lot of these larger installations going in the regional energy zones and stuff like that.
So this does come down to local communities being able to negotiate with some of these big renewable companies, doesn't it?
That is one of the barriers that we see for future solar gardens. The reason why Pingala got involved is that we want not just to help with this one, but we want to help with future ones as well. We'll at least share some of the tools that we used and some of the learnings that we got from doing Haystacks Solar Garden, but also we're happy to get involved and help out with those negotiations and discussions, because they do require a fair bit of institutional knowledge and understanding of how solar development works, how the electricity market and the NEM work largely.
Yeah.
There are a lot of barriers just for your average community energy group, which is usually a group of people that have come from an environmental protection or environmental advocacy background. Quite possible for them to pick up our knowledge sharing report and go to a local developer and say,
This is what we want. Have a look.
yeah.
Yes.
But if they do have any issues, they do need some help. Pingala and I'm not a part of Community Power Agency, but I'm sure Community Power Agency would also be happy to talk to them.
Nigel, just a final question. What's your vision for the future of solar gardens in Australia, and what do you think needs to change to unlock their full potential?
I suppose this is an opportunity for me to get on my high horse a little bit and say that I think that in Australia, the renewable revolution is starting to finally happen. It might not be as fast as what some people like, but it's happening and it's not going to stop or slow down. Thankfully, we are moving to a more renewable way of generating electricity, first through the 2 million plus households that do have rooftop solar, and now through sort of larger scale projects finally getting onto the NEM. What I'm more concerned about now is not if the renewable energy revolution is going to happen, but is it going to be fair?
Mm.
Solar gardens is a way that we can help make the renewable revolution fair. And let's be frank, the same cowboy attitude that was in the oil and gas industry could easily happen in the solar and wind industry if community's not involved.
Mm.
Any community involvement in a lot of these projects, and that might not just be solar gardens. There's other ways communities can get involved in large projects, but I think solar gardens is a very good win-win-win for everyone. To reach that point where solar gardens are more heavily involved in, let's say, every large-scale renewable energy project, it does need some more support and funding. We've done one pilot project. We've got a lot of learnings and a lot of things that we'll be able to do faster and easier next time round. But we do need a little bit more work, a little bit more funding and support from state and federal governments to help get some of these projects up and running. And we need more support for communities to be able to start to have these conversations with local developers. So mechanisms for communities to get involved. These could be like in Denmark, where a certain proportion of large-scale renewable energy projects need community investment in order for them to be approved. Or it could be incentives to developers for having communities involved in their projects, either through fast tracking or other application incentives or administrative incentives. But in the long term, it could just be a way of life for energy projects in Australia that communities can get involved through investment and solar gardens and other avenues.
Well, all those options and partnerships sound healthy to me. Nigel Hancock, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
And Nigel Hancock is the project manager at Pingala Community Energy and the secretary of the Haystacks Solar Garden Co-op. And I should add that Haystacks was a team effort between Pingala, Community Power Agency, Como Energy, Energy Locals and Grong Grong Solar Farm. It takes a village sometimes to build a real community energy project. Well, that's it for Switched On. I hope you can join me next week when I'll be chatting to some of the new, very energy literate community independents who are running in the upcoming election. I'm Anne Delaney. I hope you can join me then.